what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to go to Rick in Arizona. Aloha, Rick. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, my Kathy Griffin's on my mind.
I feel sorry for you.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment that, Trump was the big shot casino operator in Atlantic City, and that means he's got the mafia connections. And whether the casino's Indian reservation or, Las Vegas, you name it, that's the mob. And they just cut off Kathy Griffin's head in the entertainment industry. She had a job at the Route 66 casino in Albuquerque, and she was fired. And then ADT, the security company, pulled all their advertising. She's finished.
Yeah, and MGM Resorts has just announced that they'll never book her as an entertainer in any of their resorts from now on either. And she did it to herself. She did it to herself. Yeah, well,
that's going to close the mouth of the left. You watch. That's all I got to say today. Thank you for taking my call.
All right, you got it. Thank you very much. And it's not closing the mouth of the left. They're out there trying to make it look like she's the victim now. And even Fox News is reporting on how all these liberals are literally attacking Barron Trump for being traumatized by this photo. And again, I think it's really going to hammer home the point. There is no compassion out there in the liberal mindset, and it really is kind of ugly. All right, another phone call. Joe in New Jersey. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike.
Yes.
Yeah, about that Uber thing. I was doing car service limo business for 22 years under my own name, Joey's Town Car Service, and due to a heart issue in late in 2015, and then a rogue driver, I had to sign up for Uber. At 69, what am I going to do? I can't do iron anymore. So I'm driving my car, for Uber, and just for the hell of it, I did 4 trips this morning within an hour, and I got paid a whopping $15.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very good.
Uber is not cracked up to what they advertise.
Well, there's also the other issue that when you're dealing with a regular cab company, you know who they are. Yeah, the driver's identified, and the drivers have been checked out before being hired. Somebody can pull up and say, I'm from Uber, and you can hop in the car and all of a sudden find yourself the victim of a crime. Plus, there's also the issue that apparently a lot of Uber drivers themselves have been victims of crimes as well. So it was an interesting concept, but it had serious design flaws, and now apparently, for whatever reason, they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars. And maybe somebody ought to take a good look. Maybe somebody ought to take a good look at the books to see if there's some kind of financial skullduggery going on there, because that's a huge amount of money to be losing.
And prior to this announcement, they lost $900 million in the quarter before.
Yeah, that's. If I were with the SEC, I'd be taking a look. What am I saying? The SEC doesn't ever do their job anyway. Right now, it almost seems like our entire economy is being held together with scams and frauds. There's nothing else left running in this country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what about the guys in New York with the medallions? Those guys were paying $250,000 for a medallion, and now they're not worth hardly anything. The taxi guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those ideas that sounded really good, but it wasn't really thought all the way through. I've never really been comfortable with Uber. I certainly would not use them myself. But again, it does seem to be failing. And I'm actually on your side. Those guys who are professional drivers, who work for professional cab companies or own their own limos and everything, they're paying the price for Uber's apparent lack of success. It seems like it's a lose-lose all the way around. Anyway, Joe.
Well, I appreciate your support.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Joe. We're going to let you go. Hope you feel better. And we're going to switch over to Herman in Georgia. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. How you doing?
Doing all right.
Okay, 4 things. First, I'd like to say that you are the most righteous atheist I've ever spoken to.
Okay.
And I hope to someday steer you toward true salvation. Number 2.
I appreciate the sentiment.
Yes. Second, you have mentioned the questions, where did Cain get his wife and why is there evil in this world?
Yes.
Which I'd like to answer the next time I call.
Okay.
But I want to get to something else. Thirdly, yesterday you spoke of evolution and the scenario that climate change occurred long before humans came and will occur long after humans are gone.
Yes.
As if they were facts, when I know they are false assumptions. But if you're going to broadcast your opinion, please allow a valid opposing viewpoint. Now, the main reason I called. Fourth, I have a guess on what might happen while Trump is in office. On July 16, 1994, the fragmented comet named Shoemaker-Levy 9
yes.
began hitting the planet Jupiter with 21 impacts.
Yes.
Lasting for 7 days.
Yes.
Oh, you must remember that.
Claire and I's engagement party happened. We literally had a star party to celebrate our engagement. We had the telescopes up on the roof of our condo, and we had all the neighborhood kids over looking through the eyepiece on the telescope at Jupiter, and we could actually see the scars on the planet. And I remember this one cute little girl who turned back from the eyepiece, and she said to me, "You mean you can see this up in the sky?"
Well, then I guess that will last pretty long on your mind then.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yes, and it lasted for 7 days. And in that year, July 16, on the Hebrew calendar, was the 9th day of the 5th month.
Okay, where are you going with all this? Because I have a feeling that...
Oh, that's right. That's where I'm getting to. That's the same day that both temples of Israel were destroyed. And I interpret those 7 days to be 7 years and the 21 impacts to mean that the 7-year period will begin. What I'm thinking is that don't be surprised if President Trump clears the way for the U.S. Embassy to be relocated in Jerusalem and construction begins for the third temple.
Well,
technically, 7 years.
Technically, there's already been 3 temples. They called the third one a remodeling, but it was actually a rebuild. Anyway, Herman, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here, and I would suggest you might want to share this information with Coast to Coast or Jeff Rentz. And thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. We're going to do a quick shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. One of the reasons I was so short with Herman is where he's talking about how climate has changed before humans came along, and it will probably go on changing after we're gone. And he says, those are false assumptions. It's in the geological record. There's absolutely no question that the climate there's never been a time in the 6 billion year history of Earth when climate wasn't changing, and that is absolutely the reality. Okay, now then, getting on back to what's going on in Europe. Jean-Claude Juncker is apparently off his meds. He's lashing out at Donald Trump over what he sees as an attempt to sideline the European Union. And Juncker is now vowing Brussels will move to block any attempted trade deals between the United States and any member states of the European Union. And basically just went completely overboard to the point where Juncker actually said that the European Union is what's setting policy in the United States, not Donald Trump. And that seems to be setting up a circumstance where Juncker is going to be demanding that the member states of the European Union take sides, Brussels or Washington, D.C. That may not work out the way he wants it to, with so much hostility in the EU member states. But Juncker's not thinking things through very carefully. Bernie Sanders is now chiding Donald Trump for his criticisms of Germany. And basically Trump's issue was the massive trade deficit with Germany and the fact that they are paying far less for NATO. And these are overlapping issues. But again, as far as the trade deficit, that is a recognition that Germany is making good products people want to buy and the United States is not. The U.S. has a trade deficit with pretty much the rest of the planet. And it's because we don't make or grow anything these other countries want to buy. And all these trade deals are an attempt to arm twist these other countries into buying products from the United States to match the volume of products we are buying from their countries, which is basically protectionism. And the real solution, and Trump campaigned on this, bringing back our quality manufacturing, bringing back the production of products other countries want. Then you don't have to worry about a trade deficit. He's going about it the wrong way. He's continuing on the same policies that have accelerated the trade deficit to this point. These other countries are not going to sign these trade agreements. Now, as far as NATO, Donald Trump is actually correct. All these other nations are in NATO because the United States is paying the lion's share of the money, and by being a member of NATO, these other countries are getting free things. Bombs, bullets, tanks, jeeps, airplanes. And it is a huge strain on our economy at a time where our economy cannot support it any longer. So Donald Trump is right about that. Most of the EU friendship from the United States is on the idea that the United States has been so generous to the EU over the years. You start cutting off that money and you find out who your real friends are in the world. George Soros is now out there wringing his hands and tearing what's left of his hair, saying that the European Union is now in an existential crisis, and he's describing Trump's America as a hostile power. In other words, hostile to Soros's dream of a global government. So now all of a sudden, the United States and Donald Trump are in George Soros' crosshairs, which may explain why Soros is pumping so much money into Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all these other groups to try and create chaos in the streets of America. We were concerned about a color revolution in this country following Donald Trump's election. I don't think they've given up on that plan. I think it's still out there. Now, over in Great Britain, in an article in the Mail on Sunday, Tariq Gafoor is saying there are simply too many extremists on the streets of Great Britain for the police and MI5 officers to monitor. They're trying to make excuses for why they weren't watching the Manchester bomber. And this Mr. Gafoor, who's an assistant commissioner of Scotland Yard, is saying it's time for internment camps. To basically set up some large internment camps, and all of these refugees be kept in the internment camps while their requests for refugee status and visas are being processed. Obviously, this will be opposed by Brussels. Meanwhile, so far this year in the United States, the U.S. government has admitted 46,371 refugees. And it was up 19% last month. Still pouring on in. Now, over in New Jersey, there's an illegal immigrant who's managed to get arrested for burglary twice last week after forgetting his correction center intake papers in the second burgled home. Talk about dumb. He got let out on this new generous bail law, and then he robbed another home and he left his paperwork. and he got arrested while he was attempting a third burglary. Now, common sense has to tell you that any nation has a right to decide who comes in and does not come into their country, in order that the people who are allowed into the country are going to be a benefit to our society, that they're going to be productive, contributing members of our society, that they're going to integrate to our society, as Teddy Roosevelt said was a reasonable expectation. And what is very alarming is all these open borders activists whose attitude seems to be that we don't have a right to judge the people who are coming across that border. We don't have a right to screen out those with contagious diseases, that somehow we're being racist and discriminatory. And it really has reached a point of absurdity. We now have here in the United States of America highly contagious, in some cases drug-resistant illnesses that had previously been eradicated. And they're being brought in with the refugees and the illegal immigrants because there's no control, there's no screening whatsoever. Now, turning over to France, apparently Macron is not getting an easy time as he starts his term as France's new president. French prosecutors have opened a probe into a government minister over a controversial property deal involving Macron's wife. And that's putting pressure on Macron, who's been urged to fire this minister. So already we're seeing the corruption start to rear its head. Now, you remember last week, 2 weeks ago, Macron was out there saying, well, Russia tried to hack our election too. Evil Russia, they were trying to hack our election. Apparently, the French National Agency of Information System Security has investigated and said there is no evidence at all of any kind of Russian hacking on President Macron's campaign. It's another lie. Now let's talk a little bit about Obamacare versus Trump Care and the third option, because there's an article over in Alternet where somebody has actually done a study that actually crunched the numbers regarding a single-payer health care system. And they did the study in California. And the analysis was done by a team led by Robert Poland. He's co-director of the Political Economy Research Institute at the University of Massachusetts. He's a former UC Riverside faculty member. And he basically said a single-payer system would enable all Californians to be completely covered. And it would save tens of billions of dollars a year. Of course, the whole point of Obamacare was those tens of billions of dollars every year were going to be profit for the health insurance companies, who would then kick part of that back as taxes to a desperately broke federal government, along with generous speaking fees and so forth and so on. Now, the TSA is out there. They're talking about, first of all, this ridiculous laptop ban could be a bomb, could be this, could be that. And now they're starting to expand it, where they're talking about now banning any food items or even books from the carry-on bags. And I'm beginning to smell a little bit of a rat here, because everyone's saying a laptop cannot be made into an effective bomb. There just simply isn't enough room in there. And so now they're out there saying we're going to ban the laptops, we're going to ban books, we're going to ban food from the carry-on luggage. Why are they doing that? Well, it occurs to me this may be an attempt to boost the profitability of the airline. Because if you're in the cabin of that flight for hours to come, and you're not allowed to bring your own food into that cabin, then you will be buying that highly overpriced little boxed snack of stale Ritz crackers and moldy cheese. And they no longer take cash, you have to use a credit card, so the bank gets their piece of the action for the overpriced box of stale crackers and moldy cheese. And if you are not allowed to bring your portable electronic devices and books into the aircraft, then you will be more inclined to slide your credit card through the slot on that entertainment system on the seat in front of you. I think that's what this is all about, getting more money out of the travelers for the airline industry. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Getting on to the subject of education, we were talking the other day about this teacher who apparently was a heavy drug user when they caught up with her. She had needles in her purse, including exposed needles, which that's incredibly dangerous here. And there's no question that our educational system is not about education, it's indoctrination, especially under Common Core. And I think there's a little bit of a wake-up call. This is being reported by WorldNet Daily. Apparently, 6 Baltimore schools, they did a survey and found out that not one single student was able to pass the state's proficiency test in the subjects of math and English. And apparently scores of 405 indicate proficiency with the subject, but at Frederick Douglass High School, only one student got as high as a 3 on the state exam. Everybody else was a 2 or lower. Now, that is an epic fail. It's an embarrassment. And it does show that the dumbing down of America is proceeding apace. You don't need an education. Just believe what we tell you. Believe Saddam had nuclear weapons. Believe humans are warming the earth. And so forth and so on here. Apparently over in Houston, an Antifa group there is now calling for the removal of Sam Houston's statue from Herman Park. They're trying to erase our history. It began with the Confederate symbol, still continuing the Confederate symbol. Now they're Sam Houston? I can't even imagine what their rationale for that is. Oh, he's offensive to the Mexicans because he defeated Santa Anna. And amazing. All right, let's talk about computers here. As you know, there are a lot of so-called password managers that are available, and I've always warned against them. You should keep your passwords locally, on a spreadsheet, on whatever. Don't even have them on your cell phone where they can be read remotely. And apparently, one of the online password managers, OneLogin, has been hit by a data breach. And they're saying it affects all customers served by their U.S. data center. And apparently the perpetrators were able to decrypt the encrypted password data. So obviously if you're using OneLogin, you need to get on in there. You need to change all your passwords. And of course, changing your passwords on a regular basis is a pretty good thing to do anyway. Because very often the cyber criminals will do a brute force search and find your password, and then they'll save it for later use. And so changing your passwords on a regular basis is a good way to prevent them from coming on back. Now, getting on back to Hillary Clinton and her mishandling of classified information, remember that story earlier in the show, Judicial Watch has discovered emails proving classified information was sent to the Clinton Foundation, which was not entitled to receive it, did not have computers cleared to hold it. And still, Comey said she didn't mean to do wrong, so we're letting her go. Even though Comey and the Justice Department had prosecuted other people for accidentally revealing classified information. Well, apparently, UpGuard cybersecurity risk analyst Chris Vickery discovered a cache of 60,000 documents from a U.S. military project for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency left unsecured on the Amazon cloud storage server where anybody could get it. It was not password protected, it was not encrypted, and the documents included passwords to a U.S. government system containing sensitive information and the security credentials of a senior employee of Booz Allen Hamilton, one of the country's top defense contractors. That's a serious, serious breach. And it's another reason why I don't like the idea of the cloud server anyway, especially if there's sensitive information. It shouldn't be out there. This push for the cloud is all about business. They want to take us back to the computer model of the 1970s where everything is on giant mainframe computers owned by corporations and built for use. And what you have in your home is just a terminal. That's what your smartphone, your tablet's just a terminal. It doesn't really do any computerish things. It's all done remotely in order to bill you for the time. But it imposes additional security risks. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about computers and computer security, and apparently a new high-severity flaw has been discovered in Linux sudo that allows users to gain root privileges, and apparently it affects sudo 1.8.6p7 through 1.8.2, and Red Hat is already rushing out patches for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux Server. Debian has also released patches for its Wheezy, Jessie, and Sid releases, and SUSE Linux has rolled out fixes for a number of its products as well. So apparently this was a nasty one. Maybe it was another one of those NSA backdoors that somebody finally stumbled over and said, we've got to close this one. Now, we know that WikiLeaks has been making these CIA leaked tools available to software providers to patch these wormholes that were put in there, and maybe this is what's going on with this. Now then, getting on back to WannaCrypt. Fortunately, WannaCrypt did not turn out to be the globe-killing monster that people were first concerned about. Very alert individual found the kill switch on it. And it turns out that this WannaCrypt was primarily aimed at Windows XP systems based on the code in it that was adopted from the NSA tools that were leaked to the dark web, which tells us those NSA tools are still living in the days of XP, and they may not really be up to date for Windows 10. Nobody can get anything to run on Windows 10 anyway. But it turns out now that experts over at Kaspersky Lab are finding that the wrapper around the NSA code blocks is actually very poorly written. It's got lots of mistakes, lots of shortcuts, and these mistakes make it possible to restore your files with the help of publicly available software tools. In one case, as an example, a mistake in WannaCrypt's read-only file processing mechanism does not allow it to encrypt read-only files. Instead, the malware creates encrypted copies of the file while the original files are untouched and they're given a hidden attribute. So unless you've got your Windows set up to show hidden system files, you won't see that the files are still there. And it's all very, very easy to undo. So it looks like whoever put this together did it very, very hastily. Now, the Electronic Frontier Foundation has filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the Trump Justice Department, demanding access to records about FBI training and payment to Geek Squad workers to search customer computers without a court warrant. Now, we know this all broke into the public eye with this idea that if Geek Squad technicians working on your computer saw something inappropriate like child porn, that they were free to report you. But now it turns out that apparently the FBI was literally funding and encouraging and training the Geek Squad people to spy on people's personal computers. And that is another sign of dictatorship. And it's another reminder of what the FBI is really like. They're not the swell bunch of Joes you see on TV shows and movies. This is what they're really all about, finding ways to spy on you in violation of that Fourth Amendment. Now, obviously, anybody who's using a computer, if you have information that is sensitive, it shouldn't be on your main computer. It should be on a flash drive. It should be air-gapped. But it is rather amazing how people just leave stuff on their computers and just think that that's going to pay. That's what brought down Anthony Weiner. He had all this sexting information on his laptop along with all those State Department emails. Now, WikiLeaks has released a new CIA tool. This one is called Pandemic, and apparently it turns Windows file servers into covert attack machines that will infect computers inside a targeted network. So there's some nasty stuff out there. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Glenn in Philadelphia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. About that questionable French deal you talked about.
Yes.
You know, yeah, when the seller said, it's going to take more than this to cinch this deal, Macron said, take my wife, please.
Oh,
and when he turned him down, he says, first they want to recount. Now this, I don't get no respect. You know.
Oh my goodness. I miss Rodney Dangerfield. And you know,
yeah, I know.
He was your classic entertainment success story. He was working as an aluminum siding salesman when all of a sudden his comedy took off and he became a star. And that's always the fun stories.
I hate to be sitting across the table in his sights. You know, just tell me where to sign. No, stop. I can't breathe. I'm laughing too hard. I'll sign anywhere, you know. But he was a real genius.
Yes.
I love Back to School is just awesome, you know.
Do you know
anyway,
where?
right.
Do you know where I really got a lot of respect for Rodney Dangerfield, because we always saw him as this bumbling, goofy comedian guy. Did a couple of movies, and then he did that one role in Natural Born Killers where he played the evil father, and he was just so convincing. And all of a sudden you realize, ooh, this guy really can act, and he's got range. And it was just chills. Anytime I see any actor break out of their stereotype and decide to do something that's really so counter to their image, that's always going to win a lot of respect. When Robin Williams did 1 Hour Photo, oh my goodness, what absolute! That was when I knew he was just a great star, and we certainly miss him as well. Anything else?
Yeah. No, that's it. It's very hard to break out like that once you're typecast. But anyway, all right, thank you, Mike.
Well, actually, let's be very honest. A lot of actors, when they get a success, they don't want to break out. They don't want to take the chance. They're scared to do it. They always want to go on doing what they've been doing because that's their safety zone. And they're making a lot of money, and they'll just go on doing that, and they're perfectly happy with that. Others get very frustrated when they're put into a stereotype, and they can't get out of it. And a good example of that would be Vincent Price, who had been classically trained, and he was a wonderful actor, and early in his career he got sucked into doing all these horror movies, and that was all anybody ever wanted him to do. And toward the end of his life, he was very, very bitter because he knew he could be better than that, and he was never, ever given the chance.
That's a shame. I do find myself to this day saying, have a pen.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I do still walk around to the day saying, have a pen. You know, Rodney Dangerfield. Like, this school, have a pen.
Yes.
They're running around handing out pens, you know. But anyway, yeah, it's the typecasting thing. I'm thinking also of Captain Jack Sparrow, you know. The people, actors get stuck in similar roles, Tonto, all that sort of thing.
Oh, I mean, let's face it, Tonto stole that movie. That movie would have been not worth the ticket, except for Johnny Depp in there. He's just amazing.
Yeah, making his crack. Don't I Silver. Don't never do that again.
Yes. I love that. And of course, I grew up on the original Lone Ranger, Clayton Moore, and I grew up on that stuff. And this one, it was an okay movie. If they did not have Johnny Depp as Tonto, it would have just been not worth it at all. Johnny Depp just carried that whole movie on his shoulder. All right, listen, we got to let you go here, Glenn.
Take care, Mike.
All of a sudden, we're turning into an entertainment talk show and website, and that's not what we want to be doing here. We're trying to bring global peace and prosperity, and after we achieve that, we'll go back to doing movies. Edward Snowden has come on out with a very cogent observation in response to all this fear-mongering by the government. You know, the terrorists are coming, the terrorists hate you for your freedoms. And Snowden has come on out saying, terrorists don't take your rights away. Government does. And he's absolutely right. And this idea that these other countries hate us for our freedoms, that's nonsense. Everybody loves freedom, except for rulers, the clergy, CEOs. They hate freedom on the individual level. They're free. They want to be free. But everybody wants to be free around the world. When George Bush came on out and said they hate us for our freedoms, that was nonsense. These other countries hate the United States of America because we keep bombing them and blowing up their friends and family. And that's always going to leave a bad impression. Now, here's a very interesting story. This is coming out of Your News Wire. And apparently, First Lady Melania Trump has banned Monsanto products from the White House out of concern over the health effects associated with consuming genetically modified foods and exposure to the glyphosate pesticides. And Melania Trump is saying that as far as she's concerned, GM products are best avoided. And apparently, they were concerned over Barron Trump's fragile health. And basically, Melania is saying that when they swore off GM foods and pesticides, that Barron's health improved. Apparently, he was dealing with a lot of medical issues. They changed his diet back to organic and natural, and things are much better. And by the way, a little reminder, the Obama White House banned GM food. They didn't announce it, but they had their own little vegetable garden out back there. They know what's good. Donald Trump came out with yet another tweet here. Actually, this is from back in March. And he tweeted out, healthy young child goes to doctor, gets pumped with massive shot of many vaccines, doesn't feel good and changes. Autism, all in capital letters, many such cases. So, Trump knows what's going on, and I'm sure that Trump is concerned that Barron's issues may be vaccine-related. They could be, very easily. And I hope that Vaccine Safety Commission is able to make progress against Monsanto's considerable economic and lobbying might, as it were. Somebody actually found this video clip from back in 1971 that shows how corporate media is, even back then, shilling for the pharmaceutical industries. It's a news report in 1971 where they're admitting the current flu shot for that year doesn't actually work, and if you take too much, it will actually harm you, but you should go and get the flu shot anyway. It's just so obvious, where they tell you it doesn't work, it can hurt you, but you should get it anyway. So all of this stuff that we're seeing, it's not brand new. It's been going on all along. The American people were just too naive and trusting and unquestioning to really think about what was there in front of their eyes. Everybody needs to go through that experience of that one thing that forces past all the belief and the naivete, and all of a sudden your eyes open and you say, wow, there's something going on here. Now for me, it was that copy of Look magazine that had the pictures of the Kennedy assassination. And I'd saved it from the time of the assassination, but it wasn't until after Jim Garrison did his trial of Clay Shaw that I went and I actually looked at the pictures with open, objective eyes. And I saw the fraud in there, the staging of the magic bullet shot. Lee Harvey Oswald at street level when Kennedy's grabbing his throat. Everybody needs to have a moment like that where they wake up and realize you cannot trust what is being shown to you by the corporate media or told to you by the U.S. government. Now, do you remember the EpiPen? Big, huge scandal. The EpiPen manufacturer just ran the price up incredibly high, and it really cost a lot of money for the American people who need these EpiPens to be able to deal with some of these adverse reactions to things like peanuts, which are themselves an artifact of vaccine adjuvants. But apparently now there's a big issue where the Department of Health and Human Services has concluded that the company actually stiffed taxpayers for 3 times more than was previously believed. They basically ripped off the U.S. government for $1.27 billion. Well, now that it's the government's money, we'll see action being taken against that. Let's see, we already mentioned this with the dropping of the Paris Accord. Jean-Claude Juncker actually said America will not be allowed to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, and saying he, Jean-Claude Juncker, controls American policy. I think he needs to blow into that little breathalyzer before he does any more speeches. Because I can tell you right now, claiming that he is in charge of U.S. policy is not going to go over very well with Donald Trump. Not one tiny bit. Now, as you know, pollution can be a big problem. And in this article out of Blacklisted News, they're raising the issue of pharmaceutical pollution. where the factories that are actually making these medications are simply dumping the leftovers into nearby waters. In this case, they're talking about a plant in India that has no filtration or any other kinds of alternative ways of disposing the material. And they're saying that the huge amounts of antibiotics that are going into the water are leading to the accelerating rise of the superbugs, the antibiotic-resistant pathogens, because they're exposed to low doses in the water from the pollution. The low doses don't kill them, but they do build up a tolerance. And now we're seeing the spread of diseases like drug-resistant tuberculosis. And we could be coming up on a situation where there's going to be a pandemic with some pathogen that has already been exposed to all the different medications that are out there, and it will be immune. Now, when I was a kid, if you wanted to earn money, there were some things you could do. You could collect the empties that were thrown by the side of the road, take them down to the store for the deposit. You could set up a lemonade stand. I did that as a kid. You could mow lawns for the neighbors for money. That was your entree into a work ethic. Nobody gives you money. You go on out and you make it yourself. We've been hearing all these horrible stories about children's lemonade stands being shut down by local governments because it's cutting into the profits of the local lemonade storefront, and we can't cheat the storefront because they're businesses, so forth. Now then, apparently there is a ridiculous situation in Gardendale, Alabama, and some other cities where children are now facing fines and arrest if they do not get a permit from the government, which costs $110 to mow grass for money. Now, how many kids are going to be mowing lawns if they have to pay $110 before they even start? I mean, it's ridiculous. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And somebody just sent me an email for a website called openmandriva.org, and apparently it is an open source desktop platform to try and break us away from the spyware-filled Windows and OS X, and apparently you can download this and run it on a machine. It'd be interesting to look at. I think it's time to have more operating systems, simply to get away from the abuses of the corporations, in particular Microsoft. Every 5 years you will buy a new operating system and you will buy all new versions of the applications you bought 5 years ago. Getting on back to the abuses of government, there is a farm up in Michigan called Country Mill Farm. It's been owned by the Tennis family for generations, and they grow organic apples, blueberries, pumpkins, sweet corn. And over the last 7 years, they have sold a lot of their produce at the farmers market owned by the city of East Lansing, Michigan. And all of a sudden, they're being told no. Now, the Country Mill Farm allows itself to be used as a venue for weddings. But apparently, some time ago, somebody asked if they could have a same-sex wedding at the farm, and the Tennis family said no, they're Catholic, and it went against their religious belief. And so now the city of East Lansing is saying that they're not going to be allowed to sell their farm produce until they conform to the same policies on same-sex marriages. I'm sorry, what does same-sex marriage have to do with feeding the people or running a business? Now, if somebody wants a same-sex wedding, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And there are plenty of places you can go to have a same-sex wedding. This idea of trying to force your way into some place where you are not wanted and then economically punish them afterwards, that is an abuse of government. Especially when you realize that the First Amendment says that government isn't supposed to mess with religion. Anyway. We're really in the bread and circuses phase of the deterioration of the American empire. Anybody whines loud enough, they're going to get what they want. Let me give it a try. I need $5 million. You're discriminating against me if you don't give me $5 million. It's a microaggression. I need some Play-Doh. Claire's laughing in the other room here. If you are a consumer of the Pepsi products, you're going to love this little story. Apparently, back in 2013, the Center for Environmental Health released test results showing that the Pepsi drinks contained a chemical called 4-methylamidazole. And it is a compound that is formed in the manufacturing of caramel coloring. It is a known carcinogen. Pepsi denied it, said that absolutely it wasn't in there. They were fighting against California state requirements to place a cancer warning label on the beverages. Now a class action lawsuit has been settled, and basically Pepsi is now saying, yes, we were feeding you a carcinogen, and we'll try and keep it down to 100 parts per billion for all Pepsi products sold within the United States, meaning if you're in another country, you're still going to get your full dose. Fascism at work. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get out of here. We'll be back here tomorrow, Friday, on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, stay safe, stay skeptical, stay informed, make good choices, share what you know with everybody that you know. We'll be back here tomorrow. Aloha, America.